today we're going to tie a bulkhead. I've tied a lot of these. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see every other fly is pretty much a bulkhead. The reason being is because I really like fishing them and they're very effective. The bulkhead was designed by Bob Popovics a fair few years ago now. The ones I'm going to tie today, you probably can see from the video, are going to be these orange, yellow and white ones. I found these really effective recently, especially when there's a little bit of colour in the water. Pike tend to home in on them quite quickly. But not one for today, but maybe another video. This is the one I've tied earlier. This is a big articulated version. I may do that in the next video. I don't know yet. A few people have asked me, but it's going to be quite a long video if I do. So it took me about an hour to tie up. So anyway, so without further ado, let's get on to the tying. In the vise we've got an Ahrex Trout Predator 61040, and for thread we're going to be using GSP 100 as we're using Bucktail. Tie the thread down, add a little bit of glue, just come over, let's go back again just to make sure it's locked in place. So we need some longish bucktail. Now I'm getting quite low on long white bucktail, so how well you can see, but you find the longest feathers nearer the base. Not always the case, so we just need to select. It's difficult to judge how much you need, but not too much, because we're going to start fairly sparse and then slowly build up the bucktail as we get closer to the head. So again, take out the under fibres. So you've seen in any other videos, that's what you do. You take the under fibres out because they're a lot shorter there. We don't need those. So we're looking around that length. Just going to tidy up those butts. And just lay that over the top so it goes all the way around the shank. Then a couple of loose wraps round, and then come down, a couple of loose wraps, and then pull down tight. We don't want this bucktail to flay too much because it's got a lot of air in it because it's near the base. So we're just going to feed that thread a little bit further back. So because the length of the bucktail isn't particularly long, it's very difficult to get very long bucktail over here in the UK. So we're going to just extend that tail out a little bit more with some Nayat. Now you don't have to use Nayat. I know it's difficult to get a hold of, especially stateside. You can use ostrich herl, very long ostrich, or you can use white saddle feathers, or you could use a sort of straightish synthetic, just to extend it out. But if you use a synthetic, just use very little. You don't need much. And so for the Nayat, we're just going to use a clump around that size. And we're going to use pretty much not far off the full length of this, so we're looking probably about 4 or 5 inches past the tail. So I'm just going to tie that down. So what I'm going to do is tie like a reverse tie so it locks it in place, and then tie back over the top like so. And then we're just going to take that excess off. I'm just going to fold that back so it wraps round all the bucktail, and then come over the top to lock it. Now if you tie it forward, there's always a chance that will slip. So I always like to sort of lock it down that way. And just run your comb through it. There we go. So as I'd cut the Hedron Pearl Glow earlier, I'm just going to use that over the top. So about the same length, maybe slightly past the tail, and we're just going to tie that in. And what we're going to do, we're going to come underneath and we're going to pass these fibres underneath, so we get good coverage like that. So what we need to do now, we need to put some glue down on this. So use super glue if you can. This is liquid fusion. Just dab a super glue around there. And we need to come forward approximately 5mm. So take maybe a half a pencil width, take out the butts, so we're looking for the bucktail to come to around about here, so we don't quite need that full length. So what we're going to do, we're going to reverse tie. We're not going to hollow tie, we're going to reverse tie, which just speeds the tying process up a little. So we're going to place that on top, 3 loose wraps around it, and then just use your thumb to spread the bucktail around. It's fully around. Now hold the butts and then pull tight. A few more wraps, tighten it up. So we need our pushing tool just to push this bucktail back. Now this is the difference between reverse and hollow. So rather than build a dam in front, which uses a lot of thread, and we're not looking for a really steep hollow on this, we're looking for a 45-degree angle. So if we come 1 loose wrap over the top, second one, pull down tight, there we go. So that's about 45 degrees, and if that's too much, we can just lay a little bit of thread down just to change the angle a little bit. Come forward with your thread. So this time we're going to use a little bit more Perla in the Magnum size. You can use standard if you like. I've run out, unfortunately. The Magnum's fine for the tail section. Again, just 2 strands. I'm going to use the same for the pearlescent. Again, just my Flashabou's in the right mess. Nothing worse when you lose that cable tie and the whole lot just falls on the floor. So equal lengths. We don't quite need the full length for this. I want to make it slightly shorter than what we had before, so I'm just going to take a little bit off the end. I'm just going to taper those ends again, like that. And just wrap that over the top. And then come forward, to go underneath, and then do the same underneath, and just make sure those Flashabou fibres are well spread along the base of the fly, or the underneath I should say. Now we want to add a little bit of white, so this is the Magnum Flashabou white. I use a lot of this stuff, I really like it. You know, for white flies it's perfect. So we don't need too much. We'll take the full length, and we're going to taper it and then just measure up to see if it's the right length or not. The only trouble with this white, it's quite a sticky material, so it's always good to just brush your comb through it, because you find sometimes those ends stick together. So I'm just measuring that up, and that's about right. I'll wrap down over the top, and then come underneath. Doesn't matter if it's untidy. This fly is designed to be a quick tie, so it moves really well in the water, like so. And come forward another 5mm. That's it. Now if you don't like, I mean sometimes my flies you've probably seen I add chenille in between here, or some flash dubbing. You can do the same, but this fly is designed to be tied quick, so you know, if you want to tie it quicker, don't bother. Fish don't really care. And I'm going to have one more white, but this time we're going to do something different with it. We're going to start creating the bulkhead. So we need a bit more bucktail, and we're going to take the bucktail nearer the base and that's where the most of the air is, and that will allow you to create that flare. Again, we need to get rid of the under fibres, and if you find you've got too much variation in the lengths here, just pull the tips and then realign them, and this also helps taper. A quick little tip: rather than cutting after you've tied in, I tend to cut before I tie in, so I just measure up where I want those butts to come back, where those tips are. So talking around about here, I just check how long I want it. So I'm just going to diagonally cut into those butt sections, those butts, and just taper them so they're not all straight. And if you watched the last video, you would have seen me do that. It's a good tip, and it speeds things up. It saves you having to cut later. So we're going to do a reverse bulkhead. So rather than tie it that way, we're going to tie it this way. So I'm looking around about there. 3 wraps over the top. Use your thumb to push that material around, like that. Just check you've got full coverage all the way around, and then hold your butts. Must remember to hold your butts, otherwise that bucktail spin, and then pull tight with a straight bobbin. And a few wraps over the top. And use your push tool to come back. So again, I'm not looking for a super steep angle, and I want to control that bucktail, so you can build a dam in front of it, so come forward and build a dam like that, but it's a lot quicker just to go 2 wraps over the top, pull tight, and you can see because I've left those butts in, that bucktail flares. Okay, for the flash we're going to use the Pearl Glow in white again, in Magnum size. So again we need a shorter length as we build that taper down the fly. I'm looking at probably about 4 strands in total. And then we're going to mix that with the white, so we're going to tie the white over the top. You could mix it if you want, but it's just quicker just to tie it on and then tie the white over the top. So again we're going to do exactly the same. Tie that down, turn that over, and tie that down. And take some white. And for the white we're going to cut this in half. We're going to make sure we taper those ends. Like so. And tie that down over the top. And turn that over. Just use your thumb to spread it round. Tie it down. They come forward. Now we need to leave at least 4 mil to tie the dubbin loop at the end. So add a little bit of glue to this. I think I missed a step of adding some glue in the middle section, but oh well. These flies will go into my box. Right, so the next bucktail, and the last bucktail that we're going to use, is bucktail in yellow. You'll probably see me tie a lot of these in yellow and orange. They really show up well. So again, probably take about, I don't know, 3/4 of a pencil width. Need a fair bit. We need to make sure those short fibres are pulled out. And that's probably too long, this piece, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to straighten those ends up. Looking to come to about here. Probably about here. So those butts are way too long, so we're going to shorten those by about 1 inch. And with the diagonal cuts again, just taper it until that's fully shortened down, like that. I'm going to tie that down, 3 wraps over the top, and then slowly push that material around so it's got full coverage, like that. Hold the butts, pull down tight, 4 or 5 wraps around so it's secured, then use your pushing tool to come back, like so. Now for this one we're going to do a hollow tie, so we're just going to build a dam in front of it. Like so. Well, once you've wet this it will control the fibres anyway. So before we do the doubling loop we're going to add some hackles. Now you don't have to use this, these saddle feathers, because I know they're expensive. So other possible substitutes are Hedron Grizzly Flashabou to create a sort of lateral line, or you could use Grizzly Ostrich, which you can get from Deer Creek. These don't need to be too long. Now I've gone a little bit sparse with the head on this one. Usually I go a little bit thicker than this, but I haven't tied this fly for about 3 weeks, which is always a danger, which is fine. Get the idea. Tie that down. Now with the hackle feathers, when you tie them in, the little tip is to fold them back and then tie down. And then they definitely stay in. Like that. Now create your dubbing loop. I come down to the eye. Your doubling loop tool, whatever tool you use. Grab some wax. And I have some somewhere and I've lost it. There it is. Always need some wax in there, otherwise that material will fly everywhere. Now what I'm going to use for the head is a mixture of Pearl Glow in orange and my last piece of orange Strung Fuzzy Fibre. Now I'm not going to need all of this. I'm just going to use about that much. I'm going to cut it into sections. Cut it into 4 sections, all different sizes, so slightly longer when we start here, and shortening as we get close to the head as it builds a taper then. I'm just going to cut that down here and you'll see it when I put it on, what it looks like. And we just need a few strands of the orange Pearl Glow. We're going to lay that on top. Like so. Now what I'm doing here, I'm just pulling those ends out of the Strung Fuzzy Fibre so they're tapered. Otherwise it will save me having to trim them later. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use my hair clip to pin this down so we don't get any bucktail caught. I'll untangle my bobbin because this always happens. Like so, I'm going to push that, tie that back a little bit. I'm going to add some glue. Now stay still. Keeps everything nice and secure. So I'm just going to grab my bunch. If you've got one of those flashy little mark pedicure tools, you can use that, but I don't have one. So what we're doing with this, we're just going to, I don't know how well you can see this, so the short ends at the top and they're longer as they get nearer the bottom. You need to make sure they're well spaced out and there's no big clumps of flash together because it will wreck your dubbing loop. Make sure they're well spaced out. A pinch near the base and then spin. Like that. You're going to lose a few bits of flash. Now you can either use your scissors or your comb. Maybe your scissors might be a better bet because otherwise you'll be pulling all the hairs out. we go. So we're looking for something like that. We want to fold those fibres back. We want to go around the head. You don't need a lot of strong fuzzy fibre. I find the more you add, the more dense it becomes. It tends to float the fly, and I don't really want that. I want that fly to sink slow. There we go, 3 wraps over the top. They come back again. We can tidy up in a minute. And trim that dubbing loop. Just tidy that head up. Bit finish. So, and to finish off, we're just going to colour that thread with a neon orange. So it shows it really well under UV. Not that it necessarily matters with pike. We'll take that clip off. We're just going to give it a comb. Now you don't really need to cut this now because we've sort of tapered it as we've tied on the dubbing loop. Okay, so if you want to add eyes to this, you can do. But you need to add. You really need to use stick-on eyes. Sorry, tape eyes, not your standard eyes because they're too heavy, and you'll end up squashing the head. And the idea of this fly is to make it sort of bulky in profile at the head end, and you get that side-to-side action. I mean, you can retrieve it however you want, but it's but if you add eyes and all the glue and then epoxy over the top or whatever, or UV or whatever, you've got too much weight in the head and it tends to drop head first. And if you want that, that's good. But if you're looking for sort of a neutral buoyant fly that's fairly level in its sink, then you either leave eyes off because they don't really make a difference, or add tape eyes, but then lightly glue them with something like Evo Stick Series glue or equivalent, and just give them a coat of Deer Creek Fine Flex or whatever UV you prefer. So there we go. That's the that's a bulkhead, a reverse tie bulkhead variation that I tie. These are slightly fuller. You can tie them sparse like the one I've just done. Very effective fly, very good for dirty water. You know, if you need a real bright fly. Really easy to cast. I've done quite well on these recently when the fish have been feeding. Yeah, there we go. So if you like this video, please subscribe, and look forward to talking to you again. Thank you.